So Anna, thank you so much for joining me on the Teachers Podcast today.
Absolute pleasure.
We are at Lead Learn, Lancs, 2019. So I feel like I'm saying this for the third time now because this is the third interview I'm doing about 6 today. So I'm really grateful to Sarah for letting me podcast here and getting so many fantastic guests in. So I was really interested when the opportunity came up to interview you for the podcast because you're going to talk to us about EYFS and phonics.
Yeah.
So what I like each guest to do is give me a background of where they are, what they've done, just so the listeners know why on earth they should listen to Anna.
Okay, well, I don't know why on earth they should listen to me, but I'll tell you about my background if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I am I'm a primary trained teacher. I did a 4-year Bachelor of Education in Liverpool, which was brilliant in the advanced study of early years. And then I taught across early years and Key Stage 1. Where I got into phonics was when Jim Rose went up and down the country and said phonics wasn't consistent, and then they gave a lot of money to local authorities to say, look, we need to work on this. And because of that, I then ended up moving, some would say, to the dark side, to the local authority as an early years consultant, as a CLLD consultant it was at the time, where we ran all the universal training for phonics. So I was known as the phonics lady in Bolton. So I did that for about nearly 3 years. And then with the way in which government funding and things like that, it was, they couldn't fund it anymore. So from that point onwards, I thought I'd have a nice 6 months off with my son, who was going into nursery in the September. He's now just in high school, so that gives you an idea of timescales.
You've been doing it a while,
Yeah, and not necessarily intended to set up anything by myself. I thought I'll be back in the classroom by September, but I'm going to have this like little sabbatical. And that didn't quite happen. I ended up very, very busy, very, very quickly, where the phone was ringing saying, we need phonics training, we need this, we need that. And that's kind of grown over the past few years, as well as my early years sort of head and expertise and my passion about making sure that we're giving children what they want and they need in terms in a current climate of policy and procedure and top-down government stuff, that actually, and data and performance management, and making sure that doesn't get in the way of what children want and need, and it's our moral obligation to give it to them. So early years, phonics. And then more recently, we've just had a book, I have to take ownership of this, just recently published a book, last year, 17th of December 2018 was a memorable day, where the story of Sir Undercracker was kind of hot off the press. I wrote that 10 years ago when the children were little, because they used to like to wear underpants on their head. And in our family, we fondly refer to them as undercrackers. And that kind of was born out of Sir Undercracker and Nellie Knickerbocker, my children. And last year that came to fruition. So I'm a phonics consultant, I'm an early years specialist, passionate about what children want and need, and I'm also a children's author.
Wow, so all that in about 11 years?
Yeah, just about.
That is absolutely amazing. And I was just telling you before as well, I bought that book last night after we had the conversation. So I thought, I'll just have a look at it. And I read the first couple of pages. And I thought, my 3-year-old will love that. It rhymes. His favourite colour is yellow. Her favourite colour is yellow.
Well, his favourite colour is yellow, but I was trying to, when I was putting it together, I was saying he was an interesting old fellow. So obviously it had to be yellow that it was his favourite colour. But I get asked by children all the time, why is his favourite colour yellow? And I have to give like a bit of a backstory behind that and tell a few porky pies to say, well, it didn't really rhyme. Blue didn't rhyme with this.
You're just creating a character. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, but his favourite colour is yellow. Yellow makes people happy, doesn't it? And Sir Undercracker makes people happy.
Well, yellow can be a favourite colour because it's definitely Hattie's favourite colour. So
perfect.
Okay, so obviously we had quite a conversation yesterday when I know I'm like, how are we going to get all that in, because it was absolutely amazing. So we talked a lot about continuous provision.
Yeah.
Do you think that, are a lot of schools using continuous provision?
In nursery and reception, absolutely, because we know that it's planned, purposeful play, and they have, the crux of their sand, their water, their Play-Doh, their workshop areas and the likes of. So nursery and reception, it will be commonplace to see that. Whether that is being used to its full potential is sometimes where we really need to look carefully about that provision, because play needs to be at the heart of children's learning. I think that they say that we talked about this yesterday and I can't remember. The repetitions, is it?
It's something like 12 times. A child only has to do it 12 times if they play.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know.
Hundreds. We need to clarify that. But hundreds of repetitions to make a learning connection, but only 12. Or I think it might be 20, but we need to clarify it. But play. 20 repetitions during play. And that play is the superfood to children's brain. However, if it is low-level play, hands-on, brains-off stuff, where they haven't got skillful adults interacting with them because they're too busy at their blue table.
Yes.
Kind of dishing out guided reading and guided writing and guided maths. And they're so busy to get through all these children who desperately want to go and play because they don't want to be sitting at a table. They want to go back into their provision. I think what I'm trying to say is that, yes, continuous provision is commonplace in nursery and reception and some year one classes, which I know you'll want to discuss. But it's the way in which it's managed and used is whether it is effective play, whether it's hands-on, brains-off stuff, or whether it's optimum conditions for learning. And the optimum conditions for learning is where adults will play with children and remove themselves. In fact, get a hold of that blue table, pink table, yellow table, and step away from it. We have a hashtag, step away from the blue table. Move those tables, get those tables out of the way, because then what we're doing is we're saying to children the challenge and expectation, and we value play. And if you ask children when you go into a nursery and reception class where continuous provision, you can see them all really busy, but then the adults are heads down around the room, so busy with their 6 children or their 8 children. And you've got, so say there's 30 children in that learning environment, and you've got 6 with one adult, 6 with another, so you've got 12 children who are learning. Potentially. And then you've got, let me work my maths out here. 18 children out there in the wilderness that is continuous provision. But it's hands-on, brains-off stuff if we don't get adults playing in there.
Right, okay.
You ask any child in early years, where do you work and where do you play? If that setup is where we've got a blue table and that the continuous provision is a bit of a holding activity until you come and do your real work, then children start to see the distinction between work and play, and we need to dispel that myth and debunk that myth with our children. And the way in which we can do that is saying, right, I'll teach in provision. So for example, and maybe some of your listeners might want to think, oh, I am guilty of the blue table. Say, right, okay, next week I am going to go and look at my provision and look what I've got. So, and say for example, I was doing, I knew that I'd planned to do counting with, dare I say it, compare bears on the blue table. You can see how much I love those. And say, well, actually, how could I step away from that? And where's the potential in my provision? My children are really interested in dinosaurs, for example. And I also want them to build up their fine motor skills, and I want them to build up all of this because I know that this muscle here is really important for writing. So I'm going to take my maths and I'm going to go and teach that in the Play-Doh area. And I'm going to say, right guys, Mrs. Lucas is going to be in the Play-Doh area today, and there are some visitors we've got in the Play-Doh area. It's our very hungry dinosaurs. And basically we go and feed the hungry dinosaurs, and we're doing one more and one less. We're doing size, we're having conversation, we're having purposeful play where the children don't realise that they're learning, that I'm applying those learning objectives to them, but it's in their provision.
So would you actually take all the children and kind of do an input, or would you just stay there and make sure that every child had come in and sort of just continuously kind of facilitate the learning?
And I know what you're saying there. I think there are different options that you can use. So you can either put yourself in provision, and so say for example I'd done a bit of a gather time, And it might be a story about the hungry dinosaur or a song about the hungry dinosaur that then leads into this mathematical activity that I'm going to be doing that is based in my continuous provision.
Yeah.
So what I could do is I could say, right guys, I'm going to be here. Make sure you come and join me today because I really want to see you. And children will generally, if you set up a provocation or an invitation to play and the adult is there, lots of them will just literally flock to you and they'll continue to flock to you.
Because they think you're going to get that time with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not too busy at the blue table, which hopefully by the end of this podcast, people will want to be
get rid of their blue tables.
Yeah, or whatever colour it is, So So I could do that, and I could say, right, and I would have like a class list, and I would have, what they needed to do, and I would differentiate. So it could be that I've got a child working at 22 to 36 months, 30 to 50, 40 to 60, some that are at the exceeding early learning goal, and I would apply my interactions, and I wonder what would happen if this hungry dinosaur wanted 3 more pieces of food. In fact, that's what he's telling me. And the children have given him 5, and they say, I wonder how many he'd have altogether. Right, he's got 8.
Yeah.
So I would differentiate accordingly, but it might be that I'm just doing one-to-one correspondence or subitization or one more, one less, doubling, sharing and halving. But I have enabled that and enhanced that area of provision to allow whatever needs to happen. And you can see that potential there from what's going on in the Play-Doh to what might be going on at a blue table with not play-based material that you can't do much with.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I can already imagine how much more engaged they are. And I know that in the conversation we had yesterday, I mentioned my daughter because, I don't really know very much about EYFS. I feel like I'm learning about continuous provision now. And one of the reasons is... And that interests me is because my daughter's 3 and I'm thinking, I probably do elements at home anyway. If she's interested in something, I'll be like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. So if we've got, say, Key Stage 2 teachers or even Key Stage 1 teachers who are thinking about continuous provision or they've heard the buzzword, what actually can it be described as? What actually is it? If somebody was in Key Stage 2 was thinking, what are they talking about today?
They're talking about a learning environment that is enabled with resources that will allow children to practice and apply their developing skills at a developmentally appropriate level for them, and that it's open-ended so that actually the possibilities are endless. That we have enabled our environments where we as the adults understand the potential in that provision of the learning that could potentially take place with our children. But what we need to do is we need to give our children and our adults in early years and year 1 and year 2 and more, but that's another conversation. We need to give them permission to play. That we understand that play is important for them, that it's the superfood to the highest form of research for anybody, but especially for our children at that particular age. So what continuous provision is, it's an enabled environment where adults carefully select resources that they know have got learning potential, happy to let children lead the learning, and then happy to co-play with them and extend them, and not a case of like, so you're playing in the water and I know you need to count to 5 and I walk around the room and go, Claire, just come here a second, can you just count to 5 for me? Right, tick the box. I come and I play with you and you are pouring water back and forth and the frogs are jumping across and the 5 speckle frogs and we've got the log there as well. So I start playing with you and copying what you are doing. I'm doing my mirror neurons with you and playing with you. And then I would say something like, I wonder what would happen if we put the frog on top here or underneath here, because I know that I need to do positional language, for example, or through, behind. I wonder what would happen if, rather than setting up a staged activity, which is completely out of provision. So it's the enabled environment where we know the potential in the provision, where children are going to be at their highest level of learning because they are playing, and that we can sensitively, skillfully, surreptitiously okay, and subtly interacts with children. So they do not know that we have just applied
Yeah.
some learning to them or extended their learning further by asking a question, I wonder what would happen if.
Yeah.
Talking about questions as well is that we do the question hand. LCLAN, have you heard of LCLAN?
No,
It's
no.
a speech and language a program which anybody who's they've got a parent one as well, actually, for Hattie. But anyone who's working with children about how communication develops in early years. And it's a real eye-opener. And what we tend to do in early years, and, well, across the school, I'd say maybe even goes into secondary, we question children too much. What, how, why, how many, tell me more. Yeah. And actually, the question hand is where you say, right, we ask a question and we make sure it's open-ended. So if you can start every question with, I wonder why, I wonder how, I wonder. If you put that I wonder caveat there, you're saying to children, there's no right or wrong answer here.
Yes.
So it's open-ended. But once you've done that, you put your thumb down. Because you are not allowed to ask another question.
Okay.
You need to interact with children. So you comment on what they're doing. I want you to try this tonight with Hattie.
Yeah, okay.
So you comment about what they're doing. You repeat what they've said. You expand what they've said. So say Hattie said, I don't know what level she's at, but say she was in the bath and there was a boat and she said, oh, the boat. And you might expand that. You might say, the blue boat floating on the water.
Oh, we do that a lot,
Yeah, so expansions. Yeah. So depending on where, so say Lottie, sorry, not Lottie, sorry.
Do you know what? We nearly called our second daughter Lottie,
well,
but we thought Hattie and Lottie were too similar. That's
right?
very strange.
That
Carry
is very
on.
strange, but I apologize. But say, Hattie, I'll get this right now. Say Hattie's sort of speaking at, like, say when she was, I'm sure she's a right chatterbox, but when she was speaking in one word utterances, you would expand it by one or two.
Yeah.
And bring and improve their vocabulary and their language structures.
Yeah.
So wherever they are, you expand it by one or two more words.
Yeah.
So you repeat, expand, or then you might explain. The blue boat, yes, it's floating on the water. So so I've got my comment, repeat, expand, explain, and then, if I so wish, I can then ask myself another question.
Because you've been through all that process.
Yeah, but I don't have to go, comment, repeat, expand, explain. I might expand a few times, I might explain, I might comment. And actually what you'll find is as you get into it, and I really strongly suggest that you guys or your listeners try it, first of all, how many questions are you actually asking children?
Yes.
And I'll tell you a little story, it's really funny. A little boy in reception, and his TA was with him in the construction area, and she went over and she said, and what colour's that one? He said, blue. And what colour's that one? It's yellow. And what colour's that one? It's red. And he looked at her and he went, oh, miss, do you not know your colours either? And actually, I could be playing with that child and saying, I wonder what would happen if we tried to balance the blue one on there. And that child goes and gets the blue one. So I know that he's understood
what
balance, putting it on top, what colour it is. I don't need to continually
quiz him all the time.
Quiz and question. So that adult in the continuous provision, you limit your questions.
And children of that age do get bored of the questions as well, because I'll ask Hattie a lot of questions, and she's very good. She likes to answer them, but I think after a while she just stops answering because she's bored.
Yeah,
she's bored of I don't want to tell you what happened at school today, Mummy.
No, and it's that sustained shared conversation. It's a conversation where I serve a ball to you and you serve it back to me, and it's a conversation rather than. I mean, this is a conversation. I know you're asking me questions, but you're also commenting and repeating. You're explaining. You're expanding. If you just ask me lots of questions, I'd be just sitting here like this, like I was in mastermind.
Yes.
And if you think about a super loaded, pimped up Nerf gun, okay, and basically a child in the Play-Doh area or the sand area, and you're going, bam, 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 bam. That is what you're doing to them. You're asking them too many questions. So you close it, you limit the conversation, but also with the question hand as well and you need to get a Sharpie marker and write the number 10 on your hand, because it takes children 10 seconds to process language.
And what you've asked,
Yeah. So I might say, I wonder what would happen if. And if you and I say to you, oh, right, okay, so I wonder what would happen if my microphone didn't work now, Claire. No, wait a minute, we need 10 seconds.
Is it up yet? This is a long time.
It's awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally awkward. But we as adults then will dive in and say something else, and then we've reset the whole communication
They can't think properly.
process. So then we end up speaking for them. So that 10 seconds, even though it's totally awkward for us, I mean, not all children will be, and if they haven't answered you, it's because they don't want to interact with you, and you might want to come back to them later. But we sometimes, like you were ready to dive in at 2 seconds then. 2 seconds was uncomfortable for you.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're like, but like if you're at a dinner party or something like that and there's uncomfortable silences, I feel the need to fill them.
I do, absolutely. Yes.
And it's that thing, as adults we do, it's uncomfortable for us, but we need to give children what they want and need.
Yeah, and allow that time.
So going back to those things that if anything, to try next week before half term, or to really think about practice over the next week, 'cause then you've got half term, and then it's like, right, okay, well, after half term, let's do a bit of action research here. You know, let's find out whether moving away from the blue table into provision, I've not even gone into outdoor provision yet, but in the indoor or the outdoor, go and teach in there.
Yeah, even if you just try one lesson a week, just seeing what it's like.
Yeah, but once you've done it once, you'll know that it's the right thing to do, and you'll just shift your provision over. And it's having the confidence to know that you're not sitting at that blue table. So when your senior leaders come in, it looks like you're doing some work with children and like happy days. I used to, Tracy, my head at Moorside in Salford, could hear her because she had lovely high heels and could hear her coming through the hall. I sometimes would jump and move away from playing with children and look like I was doing something really, effective with children.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, this was years ago, but why am I doing that? It goes against the grain of everything, and it's having that confidence as a teacher to know that you're in early years because you love 3, 4 and 5 year olds.
Yeah.
You want to give 3, 4 and 5 year olds what they want and what they need, and having that confidence to say, no, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And actually the learning that they might have had at the blue table could be quite limited, but the learning that they're going to have in that Play-Doh area or that bug hotel or that mud kitchen where you're doing your guided reading, your guided writing, your guided maths, or actually you're doing reading, writing and maths all in one session because you're doing it holistically.
Yeah.
And it's basically step away from the blue table, get into provision, teach where children want to be.
Yeah. Because they're going to enjoy it so much more.
Well, the other thing is, Claire, what happens is that children go from this yo-yo effect from going from the blue table to provision, that the skills that you're teaching them over here on the blue table, they don't transfer them into the provision. But I know if I do my Hungry Dinosaurs, and my colleague who's on outdoor play, I've got a heads up adult who's playing with children as well, but I've got a colleague on outdoor play who's they're going on a bug hunt, they're going to find a big one. We're not scared, even though Mrs. Lucas is really scared because she doesn't like bugs. And you're reading, your writing and maths. There's joy and passion in children's faces. They're excited about their learning. But then when I'm not teaching there, you will still see children going on a bug hunt.
Going back to that.
And doing it with their friends.
Rehearsing it,
and rehearsing and practicing and applying those skills. So they're practicing those over and over again. And our children have got what we call mirror neurons. Adults, not as much so. I think if you've quite got quite a lot of empathy and you are quite socially aware, then you do tend to start mirroring the person that you're talking to. You kind of to make them feel at ease. But some adults do have that, some don't. But our children have mirror neurons. I don't know. Have you ever seen Hattie? Does she ever try and pretend to be you?
Yeah, she does. She says, "I'm Mummy and you're Hattie."
I know, but does she say things that you do?
Oh, yes, all the time. I think, that's where you got that from.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I say that,
so these mirror neurons, basically, our children and all your nursery and reception teachers will know this, that if they get to sit on your chair, your throne, where you take the register, you will find them there sitting on your chair and they will take you off to an absolute T. And you're like, oh no, I don't really sound like that. And when my little boy was in nursery, I got called in and they said, we just have a bit of a chat. And I was thinking, oh God, here it starts. But actually it was a very funny story. He'd spent hours in the construction area building this masterpiece. And some of the other boys were running around being superheroes and they knocked it down. And he threw his hands up in the air and he said, And I was waiting for them to say something terrible, but he threw his hands up and said, "For the love of God."
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, he does hear that at home. And it could have been a lot worse. But what children do is they mimic everything that we do. So if we want children to teach, if we want children to learn from continuous provision and play, we need to be in there playing with our children so that they practice and apply those developing skills in the provision. Does that make sense?
That's amazing.
I feel like I've rambled. I'm sorry.
No, you haven't rambled at all.
I better have.
You've given so much amazing content. Thank you. So you've obviously talked about children being in continuous provision and having brains off. What did you say the opposite was?
So you've got hands-on, brains off is one end of a sort of a continuum, so to speak. Then you can yo-yo to highly structured. So that might be, right, Claire, come and sit down. You're going to do this right here, right now with me. But what we want in the middle is like optimum conditions for learning. Right,
okay. So the optimum conditions for learning, have you got any ideas of things that teachers could do? I don't know, maybe something for maths or something for writing that would just give them something to kind of start with?
Right, okay. So for example, if they've got a mud kitchen outside next week, don't do your guided writing at the blue table where you say, children, come and do your writing for me. Number one, as soon as you say that they're doing it for you, then they're switched off. What we're going to say is, today, guys, we're going to be generating recipes in the mud kitchen or the outdoor kitchen. I don't generally call it a mud kitchen anymore. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but I think if you just say mud, it's all about mud.
Yeah.
You want herbs in there, you want lavender, you could call it a concoction corner or the kitchen. But basically, we're going to be making recipes. And so it's a guided writing session. And basically, they've got clipboards at the side of them. And the clipboards have got their phonic mats on, or if they go onto Fun Phonics, if I'm allowed to mention Fun Phonics, but they have their bands, they have phonic bands, and they wear them. And we say, we hear our sounds in our words really well. We look at our bands to see and spell, because I can hear for mud, but sometimes I can't remember what it quite looks like. So I'll get my band or I'll get my phonic mat. So if it's the phonic mat, we hear the sounds in our words really well. We look at our mats to see and spell, and that helps us remember what they look like. But basically, they've got the clipboards, and the children, we have like a bit of an input, a conversation about what they might want to do. They go off and they do their learning, and I'm reminding them to make sure that they record their learning. But also, I'm not facilitating that where I'm sitting there and doing nothing. I'm also making my mud pie as well.
Okay.
And so I'm shared writing at the same time.
Yeah, and they're seeing that. You're modelling it like just as they're doing it as well.
Absolutely. And because they're doing and then they're recording, so right, okay, what's the first ingredients, right? You choose your first ingredient, not, okay, so right, we're all going to put 1 scoop of mud in. What are you going to choose? Right, and what did you choose? Tell the person next to you what you chose. Right, okay, let's record it. So they're doing short, sharp bursts of recording and not longer writing, where actually it hurts them, Claire. Just do that. Feel that muscle there.
Just for the podcast, this is the muscle which is a bit further down from your thumb.
Yeah, can you see it there? Just feel that there. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, ow. Yeah.
It hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right, okay. That doesn't develop till the age of 8 for children.
Wow.
Now, pretend you're picking up a pen. Feel how much that muscle is being used.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see. Yeah.
You talk to children and they will say it hurts.
Yeah.
So, short, sharp bursts of writing. So you decrease the amount of time, but you increase the frequency. So micro writing bursts or micro recording bursts. So I went off on a tangent then. I'm sorry, I do that quite often.
No, that's fine.
But they're doing that, and actually children, especially boys, flourish when the pressure is off. And as soon as you move away from that blue table and you go and do your guided writing and provision, now I've said the kitchen, think where else you could do a guided write, where you can do short, sharp bursts of recording with your children. Make sure that the environment's enabled, make sure that you're co-playing with them, that they don't feel it's too over-directed, that it's open-ended. And you are going to get the very best of your children. You're going to get the very best of them because they're going to be functioning up here in the neocortex, where their synapses are firing all over, because not only are they doing their literacy skills, they're moving. They're outdoors. They've got 25% more oxygen than the indoors. They are choosing ways to do things. They are making plans. They are not a case of come and do your writing for me and you'll get a sticker.
Yeah.
So they're enjoying and achieving what they've set out to do. And the language that I'm using there, the characteristics of effective learning.
Yeah.
So you've got your 3 prime areas that children need: the communication, language, physical, and your personal, social and emotional. They're all cooking on gas. So all those synapses are firing. Then actually I'm doing shape, space and measure, and I'm doing maths, but what's leading my learning is literacy and writing.
Yeah.
But I've also got expressive arts and design there, and I've also got understanding of the world. And they are the 7 areas of learning. And in the early years foundation stage, allowing the characteristics of effective learning to just be there, because you've made it so open-ended and playful, that they're functioning at the highest level of their capability. And you know that that is exactly what they can do at that moment in time.
Yeah. Just thinking about this now, it just sort of reminded me. So, sometimes schools that are in more deprived areas, their children sort of don't go on school trips. And I know some of the research is that if children have, they try and go on more school trips because they're better writers, and maybe those families who do take the children, to castles and different places.
Those life experiences.
Yeah, and really, I suppose what you're doing is creating those life experiences that either mirror what they could get at home, or maybe what they don't get at home, because they're experiencing things that then they can write about.
Yeah.
So I guess really we do see it further up. Am I making sense?
I think so, yeah. In terms of that, you're giving children the opportunities that they might not.
Yeah, it's action, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the action and the experience that then makes you understand it so much that you want to write about it.
Yeah, and it's got to be something that they want to write about. It's got to be purposeful writing. Yeah. Otherwise, if it's not purposeful, if I don't see a purpose in it, why on earth would I write for you?
Yeah.
So it's communicating those messages, and I don't want to talk too much about a message centre, but you definitely need, and your listeners need to get a book called Can I Go and Play Now by Greg Bottrell. But Greg does something called the Message Centre, and it's absolutely revolutionary stuff. Now, I don't want to talk about this too much because I'd be stealing Greg's thunder, but it's about going back to why we write and communicating a message and it being purposeful.
Yeah.
And we've got to make it purposeful and meaningful for our children. And I say, in my best Manchester accent, or Salfordian accent, should I say, if they ain't got out to talk about, they ain't got out to write about.
Yeah.
That's my best accent coming
and
out
that's
there.
exactly what I'm trying to say. It's about the experience, I guess. So, we know that when they've got, we try to create these experiences for them so that they've got something to write about. And it's the same lower down, isn't it? They need all these experiences and it's not just writing, is it? They need to experience the learning rather than being told to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And there are actually learning retention rates, and I can't, if I get this wrong now, you can't sue me, but I'll give you kind of an approximate sort of thing. So they say that when you talked to, or when you read something, your learning retention rate is 5%. When you talked at, which we hope that doesn't happen in any stage of education, then that's about a 10%. 20% is a demonstration, or 20 to 30%. You start getting higher learning retention rates at 50% of discussion, 60% of experience, practical, hands-on, and actually doing it. And regardless of whether you are 3 or 13 or 30 or 39, 69, 79, whatever age you are, in order to learn something, you need to play with it.
Yeah.
And Albert Einstein, not Anna Lucas, Albert Einstein says it, play is the highest form of research. And it's about experiential stuff, but we shouldn't stop play just because we close the door at the age of 5.
Yeah.
And bring it, and hands-on stuff, experiential stuff is how we learn. Simon sent something to me the other day, said, you need to use this in your presentation this afternoon.
Hunt,
yeah, Simon Hunt. And I was like, right, okay, but I don't know how to do it. He's like, I'll give you a tutorial. I went, no, it's all right, I'll have a play. And had a play, and I now know how to use it. Yeah. And it's experiencing those as well. There's a 90% learning retention rate. What do you reckon it is?
What do you mean?
So I've just gone through all of those. So you've got experience, discussion, practical, hands-on, play. There's
Teaching.
Teaching you learning to others.
Yeah.
So as well with our children, in terms of their play, and this is something that your listeners might be really interested in. And I say it and they're like, oh, I never thought about that before. But if you're a secondary teacher, aren't you? And Key Stage 2 as well?
Yeah, secondary then Key Stage 2, yeah.
Yeah, so you know about plenaries and how important plenaries are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Were.
Or were. But you do need to sum up your lessons, don't you?
Yeah.
And when in a play-based situation, we don't sum up, we don't summarise, we don't take stock. So yes, those adults will be playing with children, and not overkill with iPads and photos, but taking loads of photographs throughout a session that literally can be uploaded onto your computer straight away, and then play plenaries. And then the children can tell other children what they were doing.
Yeah, okay,
And
right.
they are teaching their new learning to others. I had to spell the word mud. You found that really hard, didn't you, Josh? Do you want to tell everyone what you did? How did you overcome that difficulty? Well, you helped me, and you said to me, oh, I hear the sounds and the words really well. I look at my map to see, or I look at my band to see and spell, and I found them, and then I was able to write them down. So the play plenaries are really good. Getting pictures, because as soon as you've got that child up on that screen, they're like, that's me. That is me.
Oh, they so
and
want
I
to
want
see
to talk
themselves.
I want to talk about me. Well, everyone does, don't they?
It's true.
It's nature, but especially
You're never looking at anyone else when there's a photo of you.
Well, I'm not. I'm looking at it going, no, I don't like photographs of me. But play plenaries is something that your listeners could introduce, and that is another thing that's going to strengthen the value of continuous provision and play.
Yeah. That's amazing, thank you. Okay, so I was going to ask you whether you'd have continuous provision in Key Stage 2. I think you kind of already said
In
yes.
Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2?
In Key Stage 2 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to be very brave and forward-thinking to do that. I think the highest that it's got to is Key Stage, end of Key Stage 1. And I talked about my colleague Joanna Baxendale continuing provision into Key Stage 1. Everyone needs to follow her on Facebook because you'll just get so much from that. But also, the reason she's been allowed to take that into Year 1 and Year 2 is because her senior leadership team have given her the faith.
Yeah, they trust her.
They trust her, but they also know what's right for children. But they've also, as well, they know that if this is going to work in Key Stage 1, then they're going to have to heavily invest in adults. So they have got a lot of adults in there. And that's why a lot of our Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 would shy away from that and say, how on earth could we manage that with 2 adults? One, and sometimes not even having a teaching assistant in the room.
Absolutely.
So how do we manage that? But, number one, their school, they believe in it.
Yeah.
They've got everybody on board, and their results are higher than national average at the end of Year 1 and the end of Year 2. So they've got the proof. They've got the proof.
Evidence, yeah.
But also as well, they took a massive risk as well, didn't they? And it's taking a risk. And I think people are scared of taking the risk to take it into even Year 1 and Year 2, which should be an absolute must. But for our Year 3, 4, 5 and 6 teachers, they might just want to think about, okay, this continuous provision malarkey, this play-based experiential stuff. What am I doing in science this week? Right? Can I set up a station where children can go and play and find out about and learn? Can I go and play with them in there? But as soon as you use the word play, everyone thinks that you're not learning.
Yeah.
And it's getting people to realise that play is the highest form of research.
Yeah.
Play is a happy talent to have. We want everyone to be happy. We've got well-being and joy. And it's that thing about, it's having the confidence to do it. And baby steps. I know I said, no, you just do it, just go and do it. But maybe there needs to be a bit of action research. Go and teach in one way, like you normally would, where it's teacher, top.
Yeah, it's teacher-led.
Teacher-led, top-heavy, not very exciting, at a table. And then get someone to observe that, but get them to observe the soft skills in that. So, what's the children's non-verbal communication like when they're sitting at that table? Are they oozing happiness and joy? what's their communication like? What's their interaction like? What are their levels of well-being and involvement? And use those descriptors. I think it's the Lavers scale, so you can actually see and say, oh, they're about a 3 in their well-being and their involvement levels, and then go and do the same thing with the same children or a different group of children if necessary. And you've got your action research there in this playful, experiential provision that, and then get someone to observe that as well, and see the difference in the children. And if you can see joy and happiness and confidence and conversation and relaxed children where their well-being and their involvement is so high, you know that they're learning. They're at the very, what would be the word? I don't want to... They're at the highest level of their learning, or the highest level of their neocortex, if you want to say it, where their synapses are cooking on gas. And I think sometimes we need to compare the difference, and then share that with everyone, and then do that again another time, and then build up. Oh, okay, I might do 2 sessions like next week. But I think I would be drawn in hook, line, and sinker by seeing the difference in the children in both scenarios, and then I'd say, right, okay, well, what do these children want and need? And I know I've said want and need a few times, and there's a bit of a story behind that. One of my very, very, very good friends, Rachel, has a little girl called Sophie. And Sophie's either going to, and Rachel, forgive me when she, if she actually hears this, she's either going to rule the world or she's going to end up in prison, one or the other. And what Sophie wants and needs, Sophie communicates that as much as possible. And when she comes round to our house, she's like, Mummy, I want to live in a house like this because I've got like 50 training boxes with Play-Doh, potion making and all of those things. And she'll say to me, Anna, I need the doggies. Oh no, I want the doggies. I want the doggies. And when Hattie says to you, I want, what is your response to that?
I suppose it depends what she says she wants.
What do we normally say to children when they demand from us and say, I want?
I usually say, you mean you would like?
Yeah. Or, and I've grown up with this, I want doesn't get.
Oh, I'm not really at that stage yet, but
Yeah, well, but that's what my primary school days, if I ever said I want, it'd be like, well, I want doesn't get. I use it in my house, and I used to say to Sophie, I want doesn't get. And she'd look at me and she said, okay then, I need. And I thought, do you know what, Sophie? I think she was 3 at the time. You're 3 years of age, and actually I've got an obligation to give you what you want and need because you're only 36 months in age. And I'm the adult here. And if you want to say, I want and I need right now in your play, I will give it to you. And we'll work on our manners later. But I think it's going back to what children want and need. And we've got all our children saying, I want this, I want that. Yeah, they might be saying they want things that they're not allowed to get. But I think if children need it, it is our professional responsibility to make sure that we give it to them.
Yeah. Just going back to what you were saying about possibility of having continuous provision in Key Stage 2.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, it's fine. I just wrote a little note to come back to it. And I think really it requires bravery, doesn't it, to be able to think actually I'm going to try this. And in terms of that, do you think head teachers and maybe some SLT are scared of continuous provision?
I'd be very careful.
Outside of reception.
I think that a lot of senior leaders in school, and forgive me, senior leaders that are listening to this, but will more than likely agree with me. And
it's not everybody.
No, but senior leaders, like your deputy head and your head teacher, in most cases tend to be Key Stage 2 teachers.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And a lot of teachers will agree with me, and they'll say to me, Anna, I don't understand early years. I'll hold my hands up. So that's why I go into a lot of schools, because I take head teachers by the hand and say, right, look at the learning, look at this, look at that.
And the good thing is that they recognise that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also as well, like that they don't want to do the wrong thing, because they would potentially want them all sitting down at a table.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you on the phone yesterday, our very young children, I will go back to Key Stage 2 and that in a moment, but our very young children that can't sit still, they need to move more.
Yeah.
And if we're getting them to sit still, they're not going to do it. It's like playing whack attack. I don't really go and get yourself in a reception classroom and it's like bobbing up and down.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we are scared of things that we don't understand, and that as adults we like everything to be logical and sequential and well planned. We've got our school development plan, and these are the steps that we will take. This is our intent, this is our implementation, and this is our impact, the 3 key buzzwords at the moment. And in Key Stage 2, you can kind of do levelled, graded implementation steps to learning. And you start here, what I planned, and you get there through, organised. It's all okay, it's in my brain, it's all organised. When you're in early years, and I think early years teachers will agree with me, you've kind of got to have a bit of a different brain, and it's very hard. You know whether you're early years through and through, because you know that I've just drawn that line up of the plan, and that when you're in early years, it's like this.
Spaghetti. And
you have to adapt, and you have to think on your feet. You can't plan for it. You can enable your environment and know your potential and your provision, but then that permission to play, and then that confidence and skills to go and help children's learning move forward. It's quite a unique skill to have. And if you don't understand it, then yes, you are going to be frightened of it. And I think that frightened and scared is a word, but also as well, I think there's just so much pressure on schools right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Performance management, data. So I know I do this work, the author work, the consultancy work, the teaching work, but I'm also on the board of governors at 2 schools. And the governors, we hold account, and that's our job. We've got pressure on us to hold the teachers to account, and it comes back to data, it comes back to finances. If children haven't made this amount of steps of progress, and I think sometimes, here's something I once said to a teacher who was at a blue table in a reception class, and I said, okay, so talk to me, help me understand why they come to you rather than you going out. And she said, well, it's easier. And I said, for who? And she said, and it took her a while, she said, for me.
Yeah.
And that was one of those light bulb moments where I didn't have to say anything then. It was like, right, okay. And it's about what's right for children. And in some cases, yes, sit down at a table, I need to teach you this. And there are a variety of teaching and learning strategies that, like, you want a kind of a ones that you can, like, just pull out your sleeve. You want a repertoire of them so that you know which one to apply and which, like, they need to learn this. What's the best thing? And what have I got? Is it through play? Is it through discovery? Is it through video? Is it through green screen? Is it through this? Is it through that? Is it through a trip? Is it getting a visitor in? Is it play-based? But I think the biggest thing is that for Key Stage 2, if you started bringing the word continuous provision in, you'd have people shaking in a corner because they've got the literacy out and they've got the numerous, the mathematics, and they've got all of those things. But it doesn't have to be continuous provision. I would just say, is it experiential? Is it hands-on? Is it fun? And is it engaging your learners? And then, so move away from the word continuous provision, but is it those things? And is it of interest to them? Is it putting a fire in their belly for learning?
Yeah.
Is it making you excited about learning? Because if you're bored as a teacher, then your children are going to be bored as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Pleasure.
you so much. Right, I've got a few extra questions for you. So,
right, okay.
Who was your favourite teacher and why?
Oh, who's my favourite teacher and why? Right, okay. So, I'm 1980s child. Primary school wasn't the best of experiences for me. I think I said to you yesterday, I was in a bit of a world, like Dolly Daydream land.
Me too, yeah, we had this
conversation. Known as Spanner, not the sharpest tool in the box. Actually, I know who it is, and I'll have to send it to him. He was, and I always remind him because he's a head teacher in Salford now. He actually, when I was in year 6, he did some teacher training at our school, and I'll love to remind him of that because he's like, Anna, you make me feel really old. It's not funny. Yeah. But at primary school, there were always like the popular children that always got chose to do things because they were clever and they got things right, or they finished their work more quickly. So they were always the ones that got rewards. And I remember being chosen, and I think it was out of a hat, to go with Mr. Platt, Mike Platt. He's a super head in Salford. And interestingly enough, my mum and dad taught him as well, so he can't cope with all that. My mum and dad taught him, he taught me, and now I'm going in and working with him in his school. But he did World War II with us, and we were allowed to go out of class and go into the library. And we had gas masks, we had rations, we had food. It was fun, it was experiential, it was hands-on. I felt special because I was chosen to do it. So in primary school, I would say it was Mr. Platt. And I only had him on a teacher training for 2 weeks.
And I love that you're going to be able to tell him as well. That's nice.
I know, but his head might get a bit too big about that. I'll let Dawn know first. His wife. She'll make sure that he's
grounded.
Grounded. That's the word.
Okay, so Classroom Secrets is very passionate about life-work balance. If you could wave a magic wand to solve the life-work balance problem, how would you do that?
Right. Thanks for that. That stumped me. How would I solve it?
What would you do to solve the life-work balance problem?
If I was leading a primary school?
No, if you had a magic wand, you could do anything.
You've stumped me. What would I do? What would I do if I could wave a magic wand? I'd take the pressure off. I'd take the pressure off and say, I've just said, haven't we, that the pressure, not only for our children, so children flourish when the pressure is off. Everybody flourishes when the pressure is off. So reducing pressure, if I could wave a magic wand, I would reduce pressure. But also as well, I would reduce this level of maybe competition about work and busyness. It's like, I'm so busy all the time that and I'm a busy person. I am a busy person. I know that I have to reel myself in and think about self-care for the real world and, take those time out, the 5 ways to well-being that I'll be talking about in my keynote this afternoon. Giving people a break. And also as well, in terms of well-being and work-life balance, people need to laugh more. They need to compliment each other more. They need to be on the same team. And I think sometimes in schools, if we've got the right team there, we flourish, don't we? And if we've got, I think what I was going to say is always be kind. Always be kind, because that also takes the pressure off and people develop relationships so they connect. And
you need to feel supported, don't you?
Yeah, and not second guessing and feeling anxious that you're not doing the right thing. So I think the pressure, developing relationships, and make sure that you have a good belly laugh every single day.
Brilliant, thank you.
Is that okay? I couldn't answer that at first. I was like, oh, what do I say here?
That's fine. Okay, who's your inspiration within education?
I've got quite a lot of them actually. Current ones at this moment in time. He's going to get such a big head now, but Mr. Simon Hunt, he can have it. He's an inspiration to me. Kirstine Bealey, Playing to Learn. Greg Bottrell, Can I Go and Play Now? Kate Moxley, she's all about mental health, first aid, early years well-being. Sally Wright, Ben Kingston Hughes. And you know what? Who's my inspiration? Above all of those people who are my colleagues. And if I've missed anyone out, I'm really, really sorry. Let me think. Oh, I've missed anyone.
It's all right. You're not on radio too, don't worry.
Right, that's all right then. Everyone who I work with, you are an inspiration. But the teachers that are doing it day in, day out. Because I go into schools, I have the joy of going into schools and reading my book, which is always great. But I, day in, day out, it's tiring. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It's exhausting. I've been there and I've done it, and I still do it, but maybe not at the level that my lovely sister Ruth. She's an assistant head at a school. She says, "Oh, no, you're too far removed from the classroom, aren't you?" But I am acutely aware of that. I am removed from the classroom, but that they are the heroes. They're on the front line right now, so they're my inspiration as well.
Thank you. Right, last question then. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Right, well, this is an interesting one. And my friends, if they listen to this, will laugh their heads off because we had a careers thing at school. And I said I wanted to be a midwife. And the reason I wanted to be a midwife is because I wanted to see something a creation that no one had ever seen before, like like this baby, and I really, really wanted to do it. And then I must have watched some like film and watched it and went, nah, I'm not going to do that, because it was like the scariest thing that I've ever watched. And I can't I can watch One Born every minute, but I literally sit there like that.
I never watched it. Right. I don't understand why anyone would want to watch that.
It's like a horror movie. It's like a horror movie. I watched it a few times. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure, really. But yeah, I wanted to be a midwife. I kind of fell into teaching by mistake. My parents are teachers.
Your sister's a teacher?
My sister's a teacher. However, I am one of 6 children. And there's a journalist in the mix. There's a journalist, there's an actor, there's a food stylist, and there is, it'll kill me, it's my youngest brother, solicitor.
I was going to say there's that many, you can't remember.
I can't remember, But yeah, so there were only 2 of us that went into teaching, but my parents were teachers, my aunties and uncles were teachers. So I think it's kind of in us. And I think you kind of know that, don't you? But you don't go into it lightly. It's hard work.
It is. Right, well, Anna, thank you so much. You've given so many ideas, so much great value, and I know that the listeners are going to have fun trying to implement some of this in their lessons. So thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to me.